Okay, class, what I wanted to go over is how to do a nice presentation of your model so that somebody can view it and see the polyflow that you're sculpting and see what your model's actually going to look like once it's smooth. So there's a specific way that I'd like this to be presented, so I just wanted to go over that. Okay, what I've got here is a head, and I want to be able to demonstrate and show it and show its topology. So what I want to do here is to kind of stage this. Now, one of the things that I prefer is for it to not have the gradient background, okay? So that is something that you can turn on or off. Where that's at is if you go up here to shaded, you can pull down and go to your viewport background, and you can either have this on a gradient color, which it is a lot of the times, or you can switch it to solid color. Solid color is a little bit better for showing off what we're going to be doing, so that's what I would recommend that you have it on. Now, when you have something selected like this, you can see this little bounding box that's on here. That's J on the keyboard, which turns that bounding box off, and normally we don't want to see that. And up here, you can see it can be in a shaded mode, it can be a realistic mode, it can be shaded with edge faces. What we really want is when we're showing a wireframe, we want shaded with edge faces. And then when we want to just see the model itself, we just want shaded. We do not want this realistic, because realistic is going to throw these shadows on here. And we're really interested in looking at the quality of the model and what's happening with the model. So we don't want shadows on it. So we want this shaded. Now, another thing that we're going to need to have is make sure that we have a good shader on this, okay? So this is your material editor right here, or it's M on the keyboard to bring up the material editor. And this is the slate editor. Now, you want to be using the slate editor. There's two editors in here. There's the compact editor, which looks like this. This is an old editor, and really, this is a really hard editor to use. It's just ancient. They keep it in here. This is old 3D Studio editor. You want to use the slate editor, which is this bottom one. Okay, this is the better one. Now, I've got mental ray turned on right now, which allows me to get to the mental ray shaders. Now, you want to make sure you have mental ray on. That's what we'll be using. If you don't know how to do that, go up here to rendering and go to render setup right here. And when you're on the render setup, on this common tab, you go all the way down here to the bottom, assign renderer. And then right here, this will say default scanline renderer, and then what you want to choose is NVIDIA Mental Ray, and that's the renderer we want to use. Then this will give you these Arch and Design shaders. Now, Arch and Design shader is the standard shader using for Mental Ray. It's kind of the catch-all. It's what you're going to use, 90% of the time. And to create a nice shader for your to show your model off, just double-click on this, and its attributes will come up over here. And in this reflection area, we want to go turn on highlights and FG only. The reason we want to do this is we don't really want reflections on our objects, so we're just going to turn those off. So over here in glossiness, you're going to want to turn this down to somewhere probably around 40% or something like that. And then the reflectivity, we're going to want it really turn down, which will take our highlight down a little bit, okay? And then you can apply this to your model. Two ways to apply it is one way just to sit here. This is your output here, drag and drop it on there. Another way is just to make sure that you have your model selected, and then you can right click on this and go assign material and then assign it to it also, okay? So what we want is basically a gray, and then we want a little bit of a highlight, a little bit of a specular on it, okay? Now on your model, sometimes we want to show it in a wireframe, so that's shaded with edge faces, okay? And we can determine the color of our wireframe by clicking this little button right up here, and then you can pick a color for your wireframe, okay? I have a tendency to want it to be black. Now, another thing you need to know about your models, and a lot of people don't quite first get this, is that when you first build a model, it randomizes and gives you a bunch of different colors. So every time you build a primitive, it's going to throw a different color on there. That's not very professional looking, and what we want to do is professional presentations, and so we want to make sure that our presentation, we use a gray shader on this. And so a lot of people, when they're first using Max, they think this is how you change the color of the shader. No, this is the color of the wireframe that's on it, not the color of the shader, the color of the wireframe. Now, until we have a shader on this, okay, it doesn't have one on it right now, then it uses the wireframe color as the color that's on the shader, okay? So if I was to pick this and pick this color, then it's going to be that color wireframe and that shader. But once I come in here and assign my shader to it, okay, so if I pick this and assign this to it, now what I've got is a real shader on here, and this sets the wireframe color on it, okay? Now, there are certain colors that you don't want to use for your wireframe. We don't want to use gray. And the reason we don't want to use gray is because periodically we want to freeze things, and things turn gray when we freeze them, so we don't want them gray. You don't want them white, because when we select something, it turns white. So if you were to make it white, it seems to us that we've got this picked when we don't have it picked, okay? So you don't want white. And the other one you don't want to use is red, because when we pick things at a sub-object level, they turn red, and so then we can't tell if we're picking them because they're red. So we don't want white, we don't want red, and we don't want gray. It could be any of the others. For my stuff, I want to look very professional, so I want a gray with a black on it. And so when you deselect, you'll see it's something like this. Okay, now you're going to be wanting to do a screen grab. Now, one of the reasons I don't like this gradient background, it means that when I do a screen grab and then I want to take these into Photoshop and show them, then it's hard to drop these in because it's a gradient background. Whereas if I have this as a solid background, then it's easy to cut and paste these and put them all together on a solid background. Now, another thing I want to go over is being able to see through your model. Now, if you look right now, you can see that I can see into the eyes of the character, and when I'm doing that, I can see all the way through to the back of his head. That's not normal. If you go to right click and go into object properties, normally this is set to backface cull. Backface cull means it's culling the back faces, and so we really can't see those polys. Another thing that I don't normally want to see is the grid. Now you'll have a grid on. G is on the keyboard, which will turn the grid off. We don't normally want to see that. So what we can do is to tumble around it. Now, if you start from a front viewport, and then you do the typical thing I see people do, which is Alt key, center mouse button to start rotating this, which is fine. This turns it into an orthographic view. An orthographic view is a distortion. It's the object gets bigger as it goes away. You don't want an orthographic view. So what you want is perspective view. So you hit P on the keyboard, and that'll switch it to a perspective view. Now, we want to get this head as big as we can get it in here, but we want to see the entire head. Most people are used to using the center mouse button to zoom in, and that's fine, but it zooms in steps. If you come down here, your viewport tools are down here in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you get the zoom tool, it actually is a very sensitive tool where I can really zoom in exactly where I want. And so let's say that I want, this is the shot that I want. Once I get the alignment that I want, I kind of want to temporarily save that. And so what you can do is right up here, go to Views and pull down to Save Active Perspective View, and it will save this view. That way, if I come in here and tumble around it, I can go back to View and say Restore that view, and it's going to go right back to it, okay? So now, there's some confusion, people, over, subdivision. I tell you, I want the wireframe. I want your actual wireframe that you sculpted and not a subdivision. And I had people actually subdividing their model and telling me that they weren't subdividing their model. All they're telling me, oh, well, all I'll do is going down here and clicking on NURMS, and it's not subdividing it. No, it is subdividing it, okay? That's what this is. This is a subdivision. See, it says use NURMS subdivision. It's a subdivision. And I can tell it how many subdivisions I want down here by clicking these iterations. Now, by default, it's got an isoline display on. So in other words, this means hide the subdivision. Okay, I'm going to turn this down to 1. So if I turn that off, you can actually see when I turn this NURMS on and off, you can see it subdividing the model. Okay, you can see it. If I do 2 iterations or 3 iterations, you can see how dense this mesh is getting. So what they do is they have a thing called an isoline display, because what really crunches your display card is having to show the wireframe. So what they do is they have a thing called an isoline here. So you turn that off so we don't have to see all of that, and so that you have your display card will be faster. Okay, now there are actually 3 different ways to subdivide. You can use this NURMS down here as one way to do a subdivision. Another way is to use a mesh smooth. You can put a mesh smooth up here and it has all the same things, isoline display on it. Okay, you can do it that way, or you can do a turbo smooth. Okay, and it's got an isoline display on it too. So you can use use a mesh smooth or a turbo smooth, or you can go down here and use the NURMS. I don't really care which one you use. There are some differences between them. Most people that you'll see tutorials will tell you use a turbo smooth, and the only reason they're telling you to use a turbo smooth is because it says turbo on it, and if it's turbo, it must be better, which is not. But anyway, that's what they would use. So it doesn't make any difference. You can use NURMS, mesh smooth, turbo smooth. It doesn't make any difference for what we're doing. Okay, so what we want to do is to be able to set our model up at a 3/4 view of the front, and then we'll want to show the back, and then we want to show a wireframe, and then we want to show the smooth version. Okay, so I'm going to deselect this, and I've got the solid background on it, and then I'm going to do a print screen. That is a key on your keyboard, print screen. When you click that, it temporarily saves your object in a buffer, okay? And so then I can go into Photoshop, and now if I do Control-N or create a new file in Photoshop, it will automatically size it to the size of my screen grab. So then all I have to do is paste, and now here I've got it, and it's grabbed. I have a dual screen, so it's grabbing both of these, and I've got my model in here, okay? Okay, so now I want to go back over here, and now what I want to do is to click on this, and I want it to be subdivided. So I'm just going to go down here and use my NURMS. And I want to go up here and turn off my edge faces. Okay, now on my NURMS, I'm going to 3 iterations. You defaults to 1. 1 is usually not enough. You want it to be smooth. 2 is usually enough. According to how dense your model is, you might need 3. Very seldom would you need more than 4. Okay, so now I'm going to leave this on 2. I'm going to deselect, and now I'm going to hit print screen again. And now I'm going to go back over to Photoshop, and I'm going to paste. And that's going to paste it right back over it. So both of these are shot from the exact same angle. So they perfectly are the exact same shape at the same angle. Just one is smooth. One's what it'll look like when it renders. And one shows me the actual geometry that I sculpted. Okay, so now we want to do a shot from the other way around. So I'm just going to rotate this around and shoot the back of it. I'm going to zoom back just a little bit because we're seeing part of the head going off the bottom, something like that. So that looks good. I'll do a print screen from that. And I'll go back in here, paste that. And then same thing, we'll pick it again. We'll switch to our edge faces, and we will turn our subdivision off. There's the actual polys that I sculpted, print screen. And then take that into Photoshop and paste. So now I have all of these in here. So what I want to do is crop these out. So what I'm going to initially do is hit Control-R on the keyboard, which brings up my rulers. And now it's going to pop a ruler in here to make sure I'm not cropping off anything that I don't need. Now I want to make sure I don't get that little line at the top and at the bottom, so we don't have any flotsam in our stuff. And then I'm just going to turn these on and off and make sure everything fits within that. See, I've got an issue here. So for these, I'm going to do it a little bit different. Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is just come into here, and I'm going to drag to that. And I'm going to be on that layer, and I'm going to Control-C copy, Control-V paste. Okay. And now I want to grab this one. And so what I can do is if I hold down the Control key, I can click on that one I just pasted, and it will reselect that exact same area again. Okay, so drag in here and copy and paste. And it looks like, yeah, that's correct. Okay, that looks good. Okay, let's go down to this one. Now this one, let's move these guides over. make sure I'm getting its. Okay, that looks good. So now I can, on that layer, copy, paste, and this layer, copy, paste. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample this gray color back here, and I'm going to go to my background and I'm going to fill it with that. So Alt Delete fills with my foreground color. Control H turns off my guides. And now I'm going to just zoom back a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to take these two heads and I'm going to move them up. Now, I need more room going down, so I'm going to go into my image and I'm going to go to canvas size, and I'm going to click here so I can give me more height, and I'm going to go % here, and I'm just going to go 300%, and then I'm going to fill that background with gray again, and I have room to see my objects. Now, I want before and after, so in other words, before, after, what you sculpted, what it looks like when it's smooth. That's what I want, the sequence. So I'm going to take these two, I'm going to pick them both at the same time and bring them down. Okay. And now I can come in here and crop. Something about like that. Looks good. And I can crop that. Okay, so when you're doing a presentation, another thing that you should think about is this. What percentage of my presentation is what I want somebody to see, and what part of it is just background, okay? I see a lot of you doing little screen grabs and showing me stuff in which that only about 10 or 20% of the image is what we want to actually see. You want to do a professional presentation where you're focused on your objects, okay? This is a nice professional presentation. I'm using just basic gray shaders. I'm not doing pinks and purples and greens, which are very amateur looking. I'm using gray shaders, a sculpt shader, and I'm showing the wireframe. I'm showing the actual wireframe that I have sculpted, and then I'm showing it gray shaded. Now you'll notice that I grabbed the stuff as big as possible so that we can really zoom in here and see our work. A lot of you are posting little bitty presentations. Be proud of your work. You want to show it up big. Want to be able to get in here and see all the structure, see your edge loops, and see how you're constructing it, see what it's going to look like. This is what you would want to post up now. So now you're ready to save this. File, save as. Save it to your hard drive. You want it to be a JPEG. Give it a name. When you save it, you want it, most of the time you're going to want these at maximum, okay? Now, if you're getting over about 2 megs for your image, you might pull it down a little bit, but you can see here at maximum, this is only 643 kilobytes, and so this is the best quality image that I can save for this. Then I click OK, I save this, and then this is what I would put up onto our Pinterest board. And now this is a nice professional presentation, gray shaders, wireframe, exactly what I sculpted, not smoothed in any way. This is what it's going to look like when it's smooth, and then I can go in and start doing evaluations on it, what I like and what I don't like. Okay, so hopefully this helped you a little bit in understanding how to do this form of a professional presentation where you're showing progress, screen grabs as you're working along. You're going to always want to show progress as you're working on something. That way you can have conversations with your instructor, or if you're working at a job, conversations with the creative director or another modeler as to how to make your work better as you're going along. Okay, thank you very much for sharing your time with me, and hopefully this helped you out. Thank you.